We have several cohorts right now that I'm certifying in just 10 weeks to be a Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt. But it's not just about the Black Belt. I'm giving them executive coaching about the same exact things we're talking here, but we're going a lot more deeper. I'm helping them map out their careers. Hello, this is Adrian Singleton, and welcome to Beyond Lean Podcast. I first want to say I am so appreciative of all the people that have decided to like, share, tag, and subscribe to our channel. The last couple of weeks, every time I get on a coaching call and the person is new, the very first thing they mention is they have spent so much time on our YouTube page looking at the videos. And in fact, one young man I had dinner with this past week mentioned to me that he had his resume on LinkedIn for a while trying to find different roles. And I gave him a few key points in terms of changing his resume up. And the following day, he receives a face-to-face interview. So the key points that I'm giving you here are not things I've read. These are things that I actually have lived through in my career. So I want to say again, thank you all for the subscribers. We know that this page is fairly new. We may be 3 months. I think we are on episode 11 or 12. I'm not sure which episode we're on, but I'm really happy and satisfied from the engagement that you all are getting from this page. And hopefully you are taking exactly the tips that I'm giving you and you are making them applicable to your career right away so that you can start gaining the interviews and landing the roles that you want to be able to live a lifestyle to where you own your time, but also to be able to have a lifestyle to where you can take care of your family. So Lean has given me the opportunity to be able to provide a certain lifestyle for my family. So the reason why I'm really passionate about this is because I've been doing this for 25, 26 years now, and I want to make sure that I see more people do the same exact thing. So today's topic is going to be this: career pivots you should be thinking about. Building a holistic career for executive leadership. Now, I want you all to get this into your mindset that every single person, if you ever want to become an executive with a background as a lean practitioner, you have to start preparing to think like an executive before you even start getting into these roles. At the level that you are at right now, it's super important to know that you want to be holistically ready. Early in my career, I had the ability, and I was in a great position to be very humble to receive what we call an LDP. Directly out of college, I was a part of a leadership development program because I was very ambitious as a young person starting my career. And I was telling my executives at the time that, hey, I want to do more because I feel like I can offer more for the company. So behind me saying that and looking for new opportunities, the very first thing that granted me the authority to say this is because I performed very well in my current role. Now, you have a lot of people that ask for different raises. They want to do certain things. They want to add more value to the company, but they missed the opportunity to really become the best in your current role that you're at now before you start looking for something else. So I want to walk you through certain steps of the reason why I know that most employees would never become an executive. Now, if this is not a goal for you to become an executive, then there's nothing wrong with it. Some people enjoy their careers being managers and they're okay with being at that level. You can have a really good lifestyle being at that level. But for those of you all that I'm speaking to today that really want to become an executive one day, not just because of the money, because becoming an executive and leading a company and leading people, there is a lot more passion behind your career pivot other than just money, especially as a lean practitioner. So most professional things, promotions happen because of hard work. But executives know something different. Career growth is intentional. Listen to this. If you wait until the opportunity comes to prepare, it is already way too late. I want to give you 4 key points. Number 1 key point is this: being good at your current role isn't enough. Number 2, career growth today requires intentional pivots. And I'm going to say intentional pivots. That means that at a certain part of your career, you need to be adding other industries, different opportunities to teach in different countries, different cultures. You want to make sure that you have a holistic approach when you are driving to become an executive. Point number 3, the marketplace rewards influence and enterprise thinking. We're going to talk through that just a little bit. And the last one, executive readiness starts years before the title. I remember I had a very good mentor of mine. He happened to be the president of our company at the time, and he knew that I wanted to be an executive early in my career. So he intentionally told me, Adrian, you need to be intentional about the roles you take, the type of companies that you work for, and to make sure that every role you take, it puts you in a position to where you're very uncomfortable. So when he says being very uncomfortable, he's really telling me to put myself in a position to where I may not be fully prepared for it, but as I am in this role, I will begin to learn all of the things I need to learn to be successful in this role. So it's okay to just jump in, but jumping in requires discipline to stay in there until you begin to conquer that particular position. Now, when I look back 20, 25 years ago, I'm really thankful for all those roles, and a lot of them I failed. A lot of them I made some terrible decisions. But the great thing about having a great mentor is that your mentor can guide you through the things that may be tough in your career in terms of decisions that you never knew that you can walk through. So my question I want to ask, are you building a career for the role you have, or are you preparing for what you ultimately want? Think about this. Sometimes I know that we have been told to dress for our next role or to get the education for our next role. But are you mentally prepared to go into the next role? Because I can tell you, going into a role to where you are structured and you are made to think more than to do with your hands, it's a different level of mindset, it's a different level of discipline, and it's a different level of influence that you have to have. Because if I'm responsible for doing the job, if I'm building something and I'm graded off of me building something, then I want to be the greatest builder. But if I have to manage people that build and manage the location that has to build, that's a whole different mindset. We call that enterprise. Sometimes most lean practitioners get stuck because they're only good at lean. But now, even in interviewing, you should be able to say to the person's interviewer, I'm just not just a continuous improvement person. I am an enterprise leadership individual that understands that we take business models and turn them into enterprise transformation. That makes you seem much more bigger. Now, when you state this, you have to begin to talk through how do you structure an enterprise to move the business, because it's easy to move in one location. But if you want to be able to pivot to go to the next level as an executive, then there's a whole different level of thinking that you have to go through. So I want you to do this. Number 1, I want you to stop thinking like a specialist. When you think like a specialist, people will only call your name for just one thing. But the big roles that require strategic thinking, require leadership, requires developing people, hiring people, recruiting people, and putting the right individuals on the bus so that the bus can move forward towards the goals and the structure what the company is looking for. But if you're a specialist, that means that you only have the goods to be in one seat on the bus. So as a lean practitioner, remember, coming into lean is the first level, especially if you're trying to scale your career to the next level. So examples, you may just be an operational leader, but you're learning finance. You may be a CI leader, but you're learning strategy. You may be an HR person, but you're learning operations. And you may be an engineering learning customer experience. Why? Because as an executive, you need to be able to understand the end-to-end business, or we say cash to cash. How do we start from the order or request when a customer requests to have your service until we deliver that service directly into the hands of the customer? You need to understand the whole entire framework. But If you're only a specialist inside of their framework, then it's never an opportunity for you to become an executive because you don't understand the whole end-to-end framework. So whatever position you're in, you want to make sure that you're learning every single role. One thing that I can say that I'm very humbled that I had the opportunity to do this is that when I was a part of a leadership development program, I had the opportunity to go into different roles every 2 years. This granted me the opportunity to sit in every single seat you can think about in operations. But there have been certain roles that I didn't want to touch because the example of the people that I saw in those roles, for one, a materials manager, I'd never forget that there was one material manager at our plant. And I thought that I was pretty disciplined by getting to work really early in the morning time. I've always had the discipline to get up in the morning time to go to the gym. But this lady, she was there way before me, and I was getting there at 6 or 7 o'clock, and she was already there, maybe 5 o'clock. Then I would work sometime 10 hours, 12 hours, not because I had to, but because I really enjoyed doing what I love to do. And she would still be in the office. So in my mindset, I know that she had to work at least 16-hour days. Now, on top of that, I would come in some Saturday mornings to make sure things are structured and well. She would be there early in the morning, all day Saturday, and to be honest with you, sometimes Sundays. So in my mindset, I never wanted to be a materials manager. Now, the second role that I saw did the same exact thing was a controller. It seemed like they work unlimited amount of hours. But what I did do is I made sure that I always partnered hip to hip with the materials manager and the control manager so I could know exactly what their job required. How did their job affect my job? And what was the individual's purpose of driving their particular entity within the business? Materials, everything's around materials. So if you don't know materials, supply chain, then you really will not understand business as a whole. Finance, you have accounts payable, you have accounts receivable, you have how much money do we earn, what we call EBITDA, you have the P&L, the profit and loss statement. So you have to understand all of these things to have a holistic view as an executive. So again, make sure that you're not just stuck as a specialist in one location, but you're learning multiple skill sets so that as you're moving above in a company, you have the mindset to be able to do this. And when I learned these skill sets, I was able to become a second shift plant manager or plant superintendent because I had already ran so many different levels of operation and business that granted me to make decisions at a higher level to have a great influence on a profit and loss statement. So the question I want to ask you is this: do you understand the P&L? Can you speak the language of an executive? Do I understand strategy beyond my department? If I don't understand the P&L, if I don't understand strategy beyond my department, then I will be stuck in one particular role and will never have the opportunity to manage and to lead and to influence people from a high level. So I want you to think about these questions because executives are not functional experts. They are enterprise problem solvers. You have to think about the entire enterprise, the business. How will I influence the overall business? My business, we may be a public company. What do the streets say about my company? You should be listening to the quarterly financial updates. You should be all ingrained because every executive, they spend so much time preparing the executive summary to report out to the executive board because the board's members are people that are managing the company, but they are also managing the investors' money to pay them back for them trusting that the company will grow. So these are things that you should be always engaged with every single month and every single quarter, because now this is changing you from being just a specialist, but to a person that thinks about the enterprise as a whole and to be able to speak their language. So I want you to think about this. Once you broaden your thinking, the next pivot is really critical, and it's this: from executive or from execution to influence. I was once asked one time, just in a panel, which is the most influential? Is it a person that drives change because they have authority, or is it a person who drives change with only influence? I believe that influence is the most powerful skill set you can learn. One of my greatest books is talking about how to win and influence friends. This book teaches you how to help people see themselves inside of your vision, how to help people see themselves inside of the organization. Because when you become friends with people first, then the process and the likability of them to be able to follow you, there's a higher percentage of that because now they have a sense of trust that they can trust that you have a greater good for their careers more than you have in yours. That is a servant leader that thinks about the people that he's influencing to make sure that their careers can be just as great as theirs. So you want to make sure that you go from execution to influence. Early career success comes from doing the work, but executive success comes from influencing the work. If I'm used to doing the work, I'm doing the work as an individual by myself. But if I have to influence 25 people to do that same work, it's a different mindset because they all think different. They all respond different. They all react different. And then if they're not the right person on the bus, you have to make an executive decision to either add this person to another group that they can function better, or it may be an exit for them that they may not be a good fit for the company. Business decisions as an executive. These things you have to build your comprehension and your mindset behind an executive, because executives, we have to make hard decisions all of the time, but you always think about the people and the company together. And sometimes in certain situations, you have to think about the company because the company has to be able to survive to take care of the other employees around the world. So these things are super key. So let's think about this. Career shifts to make you more achievable and puts you in position so that you can see things from a different mindset. I want you to stop thinking and stop solving every problem by yourself. Because if you're used to solving problems by yourself, you would never gain the skill set of building a team. Number two, I want you to learn executive communication. This is how you move from execution to influence. Because if I'm used to executing, that means that I'm doing everything by myself. I'm making the decisions by myself. I'm solving problems by myself. Number three, I want you to start building cross-functional teams. If you don't have the ability to build a cross-functional team, you should ask, can you lead a cross-functional project? Because when you begin to lead a cross-functional project, we call them Kaizen events, or if there are other events on the front end, then you have to begin to schedule around the business and the productivity times of the team. But when you get them together, you need to make sure that you're streamlining directly to the point of the results that you're looking to get as an executive. I also want you to start working on building influence without authority. The very first thing you can do with this is to start at home with your own family. You may think you have authority at home, but it's all about influence. How do you influence your family for the better good of their lives? The same exact way you should do inside of your career. Influence is a great skill set that I believe every leader has to have. And sometimes you have to become a person that may have to evangelize what you really believe. Executives, when you listen to most executives, if you listen to their speak, they are selling you the vision of the company. Sure, they may give you numbers, they may give you performance information, they may give you financial results. But at the end, when they start talking about a good place to work, a safe environment, to send employees home the way they came, career progression, making sure that we are a company that gives comparable rates in terms of compensation. When you start hearing about these things, they are selling you on the vision. So as an executive, they are influencing your decisions to stay with them much more longer than seeing the company next door that you can make extra money on, because they want you to be a part of the organization. So as an executive yourself, even in a position that you're in today, I want to encourage you to do this. Start building your influence criteria. Start building your influence conditioning. Start building the muscles in your mindset behind how to influence other leaders. Because as an executive, you're not just leading tier one employees. You are leading other leaders that are managers of leaders, other leaders that have been managers of leaders maybe longer than you have, and you may have to come in to lead them. And what gives them the ability to trust you is vision, is structure, likability, to be a servant leader, to want to outserve your people, to want to be an executive that executes the plan, to see the plan come to life. This is all a part of the structure to make sure that you learn these things here. So if your success depends on your personal output, you're building a career ceiling. Think about teams. How do you work in teams? Even to the point, if you're working to do a presentation, have you allowed yourself the room to present this to people that are in the company that may have a different viewpoint and may give you some advice from blind spots of things that you're missing before you report this or do a presentation before the C-suite executives? So you want to make sure that you always think in terms of the team. Now, the next pivot is one most professionals avoid. From comfort to strategic stretching. Now, there was a book that talked about having big, audacious, hairy goals. And at first, I didn't understand what this means. Think about this. How do companies go from growing? If we think about Amazon, if you research Amazon, when they first started, their ship time took almost 14 days. Somebody came up with having same day receivables. I can order a project the same day, and the same day I receive the product. Somebody probably taught them that you are losing your mind. There is no way we can do this. But think about this. This was a stretch goal that maybe was an idea 5 years ago. It may have been an idea 10 to 15 years ago, but the idea is just now starting to work because they have stretch goals. So as an executive, you have to be in a mindset to believe in your team and that you can drive execution. You have to create stretch goals, because if you don't create stretch goals, you make a level of everyone in your group very comfortable and everybody becomes complacent, but they never want to grow. But what's going to happen? The competition keeps stretching themselves to grow. They keep looking at how you're performing. They keep chopping off your market share. And if you don't stretch yourself to grow, then you will be a part of the team that loses market share, and eventually that company will not last and survive in the market. So I want you to think about this. Executives are shaped through uncomfortable assignments. I remember my very first time going into a role as a plant superintendent. I was at a much smaller plant, and this plant here was maybe a million and a half square foot. It was huge. In the employee base may have been 400 to 500 employees. My little small plant may have been 400,000 square foot, maybe 100 employees that I came from. But they put me in a role that made me stretch my mindset. I became very uncomfortable, but I had to depend more on the strategy that I had learned at a lower level. But I also had to build a team around me so that the things that I used to do by myself and execute by myself, I now had to work through a team to get those things done. So that particular year and a half was a very long year and a half, but I was able to survive it. But I learned so much out of that experience that the next role in my leadership development stand was to land into an HR role as a human resource. Let me tell you something. If you ever doubted what human resources do, this made me gain all of the respect in the world for a human resource manager. Because as an operations guy, I used to send all my people to HR if there was an issue on the floor, if there was a confrontation on the floor, if someone didn't like their pay raise, if someone wanted to fight for a raise, someone wasn't satisfied with their benefits, someone lost their benefits, things happen on the floor. I used to send all of them and give you time to go and speak to HR, but come back when you get done. But now I had to be in a role to where I had to sit down and speak to the employees every single day. So my mindset shifted from seeing employees as just a number, a labor number, to now I saw mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers, uncles, and aunties. I saw their human factor. And this position humbled me because I was used to driving results. But in this role, I had to slow down and listen to people who are the most important individuals in any company. They are your greatest investment. So being an executive and moving up in your career, it forces you to be in circumstances to where you're not comfortable. I want you to think about this. In your next role, you want to be able to take, I'm going to give you 5 roles you want to think about taking. Taking a turnaround role to where you're entering into a company and they want to turn the company around really quickly to be able to spin it off and sell it. That's a role to really enhance your career, especially as an executive. Number 2, leading a failing project. If the project is already failing, most people will not raise their hand to jump into this project to come and save it. But those projects are projects that really give you a brand that the company never forgets. Number 3, global exposure. You want to have roles to where you can have global exposure. And I'm going to give you a cue on this. If you're stuck in operations can be stuck in a funnel. But when there is a need for front end continuous improvement activity, working with finance, supply chain, HR, quality, any of these things, the commercial marketing side of it, these roles give you global exposure because a lot of these roles you're working with individuals that are directly connected to the C-suite executives because this is the front end of the business. My very first global role to get exposure, I was tied to the hip and I had to dotted line and report to the chief accounting officer. I can say this was one of the greatest pivots in my career that allowed me to become an executive because I first had great executive exposure. We had days of sales outstanding at about 160 days, but it needed to be under 75 days. We had tariffs that was coming that was going to attack the cash that we had because we didn't know what was going to be the tariff percentage. All of these things fell under my umbrella. We had taxation situations to where we had companies coming in that will hold their invoices and we did not know that they were tax exempt. So of course the cycle starts over and the company could not get the cash accrual. So all of these things hindered our front end cash forecast and it impacted the overall stocks because of this change. And I had an opportunity to get the global exposure with my CAO and reduce the days sales outstanding from 160 days down to under 75 to make sure that we created a strategic process to easily identify companies that were tax exempt versus those that were not tax exempt. And then also we were able to pull in work so much more faster so that when we forecasted our cash accrual, we were hitting it right on the head. Those particular roles were very uncomfortable, but they gave me a spotlight on my career. So I'm giving you great examples and great advice of how to be chosen for great advantages in the market. Also, to the next thing that I can say, you want to make sure that you can do as many presentations in front of executives as possible. If there's an opportunity to do a presentation in front of the executives, take it. Practice at home, practice with your family. And if there's an executive within the company that you trust, practice in front of them, because they know exactly what the C-suite executives are looking for, and they can let you know about their mistakes and put you in position to have a very successful presentation. Next pivot point, number 4, from a job mindset to a portfolio career. Think about this as a lean practitioner. You work with a lot of executives, helping them find the bottleneck in a process. You go through a whole entire value stream mapping process. You go through every single process, 5 or 6 processes. You see where the information flow, you see where the material flow at. But the same exact way that you help identify bottlenecks for executives is the same exact framework you can use to stop the bottlenecks in your career. So map out your career. Where do you want to be as an executive? How many years do you want to be before you become an executive? What are the gaps that you're missing to become an executive? I just gave you great examples. Executives, you need to know the entire business from end to end or cash to cash. Have you had a chance to sit in all of those roles? If you haven't sat in those roles, you should partner with individuals that have great experience in these roles so that you can think about your career portfolio and not just one single job assignment. Executives think broader than their current role. I might have a role that I'm very happy with, but I always tell people this: every 2 to 3 years, you should be thinking about taking on another role once you have conquered and reached a level of being successful in this role. Now, you don't necessarily have to leave the company because most companies have opportunities for you to move around. But if you never communicate that, then they will never know that you want an opportunity to move around the company, to learn different legs of the company so that you can have a high level, holistic approach to the end-to-end business. The next thing is I would say make investments in yourself. Invest in certifications. As you all are on here, we have several cohorts right now that I'm certifying in just 10 weeks to be a Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt. But it's not just about the black belt. I'm giving them executive coaching about the same exact things we're talking here, but we're going a lot more deeper. I'm helping them map out their careers. What are the gaps? What do we need to attack? Let's be intentional about the next job you take. When you're running this project, just make sure it's this type of project. Let's make sure you get this type of exposure, because all of these things matter as you're moving up in the company to make sure that you are landing these type roles. You want to make sure that you have the ability to speak as much as possible. Work on your speaking ability so that when people call you to speak, you want to make sure that you take full advantage of these opportunities. I would say get training as a professional speaking coach. Again, these are things that we offer inside of our coaching program. I'm not trying to sell you our program, but these are the things we know that branding and executives need. You need to have certain levels of certifications. You need to have the expertise of knowing how to speak to executives, and also I would say this is key. You want to make sure that you have some type of board experience. There are tons of boards that you can volunteer for, but there are also tons of boards that you can get paid for. So start building your career portfolio to have board access. Invest in mentoring. If you know my story, I've invested over $100,000 into my career. But this investment gave me the opportunity to know that I would not wait on anyone else to invest in me. I will invest in myself because I believe more in myself. So invest in mentorship. When you have a mentor, without a mentor, it can take you 30 years to learn a skill set or to conquer something. But with a mentor, you can learn in 5 minutes with a conversation in 5 minutes with an executive that has 30 years of experience. Which one would you want? Would you rather spend the 30 years or would you rather spend the 5 minutes? And by the way, you should buy their coffee or their lunch because their time is valuable. And this is a value add to your life too as well. Make sure that you have cross-functional experience. Make sure that you work on your personal brand. Again, another entity that we offer inside of our 10-week Lean Assessment Mastery course. Also, you want to make sure you have strategic relationships. I talked about making sure that you partner with high-level recruiters. Make sure you partner with past executives that you work with. If you exit a company, always keep those relationships very, very healthy. Make sure that you understand financial literacy. And the last one, start coaching others. Your career should be diversified, just like an investment portfolio. I don't want all of my eggs in one basket. I want to make sure that I have a well-rounded, holistic level of my career so that when I pivot, I know how to pivot so that when executive positions come, I'm not just trying to get ready when the role comes. I'm already ready when a role presents itself to me. My name is Adrian Singleton, and thank you for joining me on Beyond Lean.